Hi, all. Welcome to the Doom Den. I am Tom McKnight, also known as Dr. Doom, because my doctorate is in public safety, specializing in emergency management. So I'm a disaster doctor. So that's where the nickname came up with, anyways. And what I would like to chat about is various public safety or disaster related items. Let's go first off with one of the main ones has to do with preparedness, especially related to hurricane seasoning. Not seasoning, excuse me. So, one of the main preparedness items, always, always identify evacuation routes for yourselves and your families. So, where I live on the bottom part of Mississippi, down by the Gulf, there are quite a few highways that head north. So, one of the first things I did when I moved here, yes, I identified all my potential hurricane evacuation routes. And in many states that are highly susceptible to hurricanes, hurricane evacuation routes are clearly labeled with arrows that say hurricane evacuation route. So if a person is visiting one of those areas, it's a good idea to watch for those things in case you get caught by one while you're visiting. And for the residents, of course, to make sure that, well, that you know where you're supposed to be going. All right, on to the next part. Now we're just digging into overall preparedness. One, water. Identification of good water or keeping a bit on hand. So there's this whole variety of goods that a person can get, such as a life straw, where you can actually make drinkable water from almost any source, really. And some of those are very valuable to have. I even tested them in the mountain rivers in California when I was just out prospecting for gold. And yes, they work very well. I didn't get sick. However, there's always a chance that the sickness may happen. It just really depends upon a person. So I'm not saying it's absolute gospel that the things will not make anybody sick. However, it didn't make me sick. So I tested it really good, and even some fairly ponded water in the river. There was one that's like a backup to backup water source, and one of the main ones is having bottles of water, and especially in the gallon jugs on hand. And the people with RVs, it's a good idea just to fill their holding tanks up, drain them from time to time, refill them, just to have that type of water on hand. And depending on the size of the RV, yeah, it can hold 10 gallons. I think my motorhome holds about 50 gallons of fresh water. So that is one way. Those are some ways to be able to have emergency water on hand. Now let's go into food. Another very important thing. All right, dried food is always great because they don't have to really worry about it going bad. Like beef jerky, dried nuts, dried vegetables. Things like raisins or the dried blueberries are also really great, and they're really tasty. There's also a whole variety of dehydrated foods that a person can get at a sporting goods store just to keep on hand, stashed away. And, a lot of the government outfits always want to say, have 3 days of food on hand. Well, I'd say that's at a minimum. A person really should have about a week's worth of emergency food on hand that they can even load up really quickly and get the fuck out of the hurricane path. So at least a week's worth of food, even better practice. Hell, there's been flooding events in this country where people have been kind of, stuck either in their house because of water is all the way around, and their house happened to be elevated quite a ways. Well, they're still living in their house and for a week or two at a time, and they actually had to paddle over to a road in a boat just to be able to get out and get stuff. And even areas where water was over the roads for a very, very extended period of time. So along with that, and along with even evacuation things, and grabbing emergency stuff and getting out of the path of the storm that you know is coming, and well, maybe having to pack up and get out of there after one is hit, and house isn't able to be accessed or isn't there anymore, is to pre-identify the location that a person is going to evacuate to. You may have friends, family members in either other areas of the state or a whole other state. Or, let's see my case an example. We'll load up in the motorhome and we will cruise north for a good ways to get out at least to the path of the storm, and usually the weather charts show the overall trajectory of the storm. So if one's heading north and it's going to kind of veer off towards the northeast, well, then I'll head north and veer off towards the northwest, which from southern Mississippi is going to be going up into central Mississippi and veering towards Arkansas, basically. And that direction really depends on where a person lives and the path of the storm that they want to get out of the way. Next, communication plans. How important are communication plans? They are very important, because communication plan is how we are all able to get a hold of our family members and even friends if any kind of a disaster happened, just to see if they're okay, or to make a plan on meeting up at either at home or at an alternate location, depending on the type of disaster it is. Like an earthquake can be spontaneous and rattle the hell and totally fuck shit up in one part of a city, and however another part maybe only have slight damage. So, and even hurricanes, tornadoes, and even major flooding events, they may have a whole lot more impact in one area than they do in another, and they also really tend to block off the transportation routes to different places. So it kind of goes along the lines of, it's becoming familiar with all the transportation routes in an area, in addition to regular evacuation routes, and a communication plan. If people in the family are going about their daily lives and working in different areas, they need to get a hold of each other, see how everything is, and where the best place that they can meet will be. And the next part of that is really to get to that meeting location. Okay, so we covered communication. Now let us get into more broader based parts of it. One is especially going into more local government or even regional government planning, general overall preparedness. So the basic theme of preparedness, and it's even stated in the Presidential Policy Directive 8, that the National Preparedness Goals really focus on whole community preparedness. And among those is 5 mission areas where you can prevent some things from happening. Awesome. There may be a way to prevent dams from breaking and flooding out areas. And in that case, it may just be a very routine maintenance and inspection schedule, and ensure that if it's an earthquake-prone area, it will be able to withstand a certain magnitude earthquake and making retrofitting requirements as necessary. That may be one, but the whole prevention thing, a lot of it is really focused on human-caused issues. So there can disrupt and we can prevent a lot of terrorist attacks by identifying who the bad guys are, where they plan to hit, and how we're going to stop them. So that is on a human-caused prevention part. Then you can move into protection. Okay, we know there's bad guys out there. We know they want to hit certain types of facilities. But how do we protect them? So let's deal with a lot of the critical infrastructure assets and how to protect them, which includes power grids, water, wastewater treatment facilities, supply chains, to name a few. How do we protect power grids? Someone can be protected in various ways technologically from things like EMPs. So we protect where we can, we prevent where we can, and we prevent and protect against every single thing that can possibly happen, whether natural or man or human caused. Like, well, I'm pretty sure a lot of the buildings in the Chicago area or Portland or even areas in California where there's a big ass shit show going on right now. Well, I'm pretty sure a lot of those buildings are protected from different types of hazards. However, there are still buildings getting broken into and stuff getting stolen. And a lot of the protecting force is also being under attack. And in that case, well, we really get into even being able to mitigate a very bad situation and, of course, obviously responding to it. And in those human cause issues, response to the thing does require a very well prepared and very well trained staff to effectively respond. And we're dealing with a type of response to where, yes, all constitutional rights still need to be upheld. People still need to not be mistreated. They might just be caught in a very fucked up situation. They may not be one of the bad guys. So the worst thing to do is just to rush in there, start shooting or start beating the living shit out of everybody that responders see, even if they are under attack. It might be someone just in the wrong place, wrong time. So it is a very, very, very complex situation. They need to analyze it. They need to plan and figure out technically how the best option for reducing that threat to property and life is going to be. I am not going to give any kind of tactical plan on what that should be here because I am not anywhere near the area and have up-to-date information on exactly what all is going on to be able to make an informed plan. It's just one of those things that, yes, nowadays we need to be very, very aware of human cause issues like in that civil disturbance, looting, and all that other bullshit going on. And I'm not talking about the rightful protests that people just flat out exercising their First Amendment rights because they want everybody to know their lives matter as well. And in that case, I actually completely agree with them. They're completely justified in their protest and wanting to get that message out. However, a lot of the stuff that's comes along behind that, they really don't give two shits about what the real cause is. They're just looking for a good justification to loot, to riot, to hurt people, to break shit, and to be overall assholes. So one of the tactical challenges is going to be to separate the completely legitimate ones that are exercising their First Amendment rights from the assholes that are looting and burning and breaking shit. That's one of the toughest challenges ever. At least in the natural cause thing. Okay, we know the hurricane or the tornado blew through this area, blew a whole lot of shit down, knocked out a lot of power. So now we know what to do. We need to put stuff back together for emergency power restoration or utility restoration or temporary shelters, and then we'll begin the longer-term full restoration recovery part of it. Yeah, there's not a lot of those really. There's a lot of challenges associated with those. Don't get me wrong. They don't have a lot of the very social complex issues like a lot of those human-caused events do. That those human-caused events are now causing, really. And let's see, we briefly covered prevention, protection, a tad bit into response, but there's also a mitigation aspect, and this really applies to being able to mitigate with flood walls, seismic retrofitting of certain buildings, and a lot of physical mitigation action, and even mitigation planning for things that can be damaged either by nature, and in certain extent even mitigated from potential human actions, like being able to also mitigate the chance of a truckload with a bomb from driving into government building by putting certain barriers around. So that's what mitigation is. It wants to reduce the chance of a specific hazard from occurring at a specific facility or even a specific community for the sake of like any type of flood walls. And response debris, that is basically the protection of immediate life and health, safety, and protection of property and the environment in its immediate to after following or during an event. And it really pertains to taking only the action that's really going to be needed to safeguard the lives and property of the people in the community. And we'll move to the recovery element. Recovery planning, yes, should start as soon as possible. When is really feasible to start the short and longer term recovery? And that line, there's no line in the sand drawn from when something moves from response to recovery. And I better clarify that recovery really pertains to bringing a community or an organization back to as normal as possible or to a new normal. And it's a lot longer term than response tends to be. And the reason for all these mission areas is really a planning guide. You sit down before any type of event happens. We find out what we can prevent, what we can protect, where we can mitigate, how we're going to respond, and how our recovery process is going to look, how our recovery plan is going to look. It's when the plans for each of those mission areas are developed. It's really best to include all kinds of elements from within communities to get a good perspective, because different elements all have different views on the top priorities, such as, well, the law enforcement priorities really tend to be focused on, okay, we don't want looters breaking shit. We have to block off streets and do some kind of vehicle control in the event that, well, a lot of roads are inaccessible, so you have to close off areas so people won't go in there and get hurt, and overall focus like that. And while a lot of fire and hazmat thoughts on what's the priority is going to be, yes, the structural fires, hazardous materials places, that those places are able to be safeguarded and basically watch for any type of leaks. And then their focus is going to be on responding to any after effect structural fires, and even be involved in maybe swift water rescue and other type of rescues. They're kind of similar to the EMS. Their priorities are going to be on triage sites to where they can do their job. Emergency managers are going to be focused on an overall aspect of really all of the above, and the emergency manager job does tend to fit right in between where the real practical part of public safety and the political part meets. They're right in getting sandwiched between the two. There are all kinds of stuff that we need to do to legitimately help people and respond and organize a unified approach. And they're also getting all the pressure from the political leaders in the jurisdiction to do something so those political leaders don't look bad. So it can be a brutal job, and there's really unrealistic expectations a lot of times on the person's job. They're expected to perform miracles, like turning water into wine without any water. So that's one example I always like to use. Well, we expect you to turn that water into wine. Like, all right, there's no water. Well, you got to find the water too. And hurry up and do it so I don't look bad. So that's what all the political leadership looks at it. And whether it's right or whether it's not is really kind of outside the scope. Political leaders often look for the right now solution and it tends to be knee jerk a lot of times, and it's really the worst approach to do it. best approach is to utilize some thought and put a bit of thought and a bit of evidence-based decision making into what we do. That way it can't be backed up farther down the road, but it's also the course of action is guided by something that we have evidence to say, yes, this will actually work. It's partly why I wouldn't want to put out any type of tactical plan for dealing with this shit show in Chicago or Portland or some of those other fucking places, because I don't have any type of evidence to really make any kind of good decision on it. And if somebody actually did ask me what I wanted to do and said, yeah, we'll share all the information with you, I'd probably say, that's your fucking mess, you deal with it. In all honesty. Because there was warning signs for quite a while to take measures to really reduce the chance of all that stuff happening. And again, political personnel do tend to make really knee-jerk reactions based upon an emotion-fueled minority. And I mean, I don't mean any type of minority group as in wrong ethnic lines. I mean a small amount of people versus the majority, a large amount of people. Simply a numerical thing. So, the 5 mission areas, Presidential Policy 8 for the National Preparedness Goal: prevention, protection, mitigation, response, and recovery. And again, that is really a planning guide for all the areas pre-event that should be really planned for and be all community inclusive. This is the first time I ever did this live feed on here, and well, kind of playing by ear. If any questions pop up, I'll answer them. If not, I'll just continue babbling for a while. So, good introduction. We could cover the introductory of some things. How about we talk about some of my favorite things like leadership qualities in high stress situations. What is the best? Is there a best? Or do we do what we can with what we know at the time and make the decisions? Well, I'd say making a decision is the most important thing that can be done in any high stress situation, and making the best decision based on the evidence that's available, which oftentimes isn't a whole lot. So a decision that later turns out to be not a very good one, but the best one at the time is still a whole hell of a lot better than no decision being made. So just imagine being in any type of emergency operations center or out in a field incident command post, and the person that's put in charge with all kinds of crazy shit going on is getting some information from different things, saying, okay, how do we get that building's on fire there, and there's these people running around throwing bottles and all kinds of shit at people and at response personnel, and all hell breaking loose basically. And the incident commander there is just looking at the stuff and like, I don't know what to do. So guess what? Nothing gets done. All the hell breaking loose continues, and it gets worse and worse and worse. And it completely undermines all the faith all the personnel have in their leadership. Now, in contrast, put it to someone who's an incident commander, all the same shit is breaking out, right? And they're like, okay, we need to close off. Let's just blow up that bridge so they can't use the demos. Blow up that bridge so they can't come across and continue their rabble rousing. And then next, we're going to have to just utilize some fire hoses, and even if it's in a river, it's some kind of water source to just blast those buildings that are on fire with all of that water. Okay, so they go along, they blow up the bridges, and they get a barge with a big water suction pump on her that can actually spray the water quite a ways, and they blast those buildings near the river with a whole bunch of water. The fire kind of goes out, but water also undermines a lot of stuff too, and some of the buildings end up falling over. Let's say, well, afterwards, kind of realized, well, blasting those buildings with the water the way we did wasn't really the best choice, because then all the buildings fell over, and now we gotta rebuild all those bridges that we blew up, because now there's people stranded over there. So, bottom line is, yes, the situation did get contained. And is there another way it could have gotten contained? Maybe, but with the information we knew at the time, that decision that turned out to be not the best one was really the only one for the time, and it was a whole lot better for doing something than doing nothing. And again, that scenario, there's really almost no good way to go about that. But the person making a decision that wasn't the best one is still a hell of a lot better than the one who made absolutely no decision. So being decisive, very important leadership trait. One of the other very important ones that really builds on everything else is trust. So, and again, an indecisive leader will lose all the trust of their people, because their people can't trust their leader to make any kind of a decision. So, and how is trust made? It is built, and it really comes down to it. A lot of it comes down to initial meeting and having really good dialogue and communication, and setting good communication with all the people. By having good sit downs and getting to know them, show interest, share the leader's expectations, and me personally, I like to set very high standards. The standard of excellence means, in a way, telling people, yes, I have this very high standard because I know you can do it. Versus, I have a really low standard because I don't think anybody can really do anything useful. So, there's two very completely different messages that a person can deliver, especially setting initial expectations. I expect very good work out of you because I know you can do it. I expect very good work out of everybody, and everybody is going to be treated equally to that high standard. And that's one of the expectations. And also receive expectations from those we're just meeting. Okay, what do they expect from us? Well, they expect us to treat them fairly. No discriminatory practices, that we're able to. They also may expect us to be able to really help them engage their problem-solving skills and build their problem-solving skills, and to provide any needed training or guidance along the way. And that initial dialogue is where all of those expectations are initially established. Good groundwork, good foundation is built, and then we can really move on from there, which includes periodic sit downs to see how everybody's going. It's a really lean leadership approach in a way, to walk around, see how everybody's doing, have periodic sit down with people, and discuss what's going on, where some areas of improvement are, what people's really great accomplishments were. All that really intertwines and really builds a very solid foundation. Really related to, and trust is one of those key parts to it. And there are, we're not going to get into every good leadership trait right now. We'll save some for any oncoming episodes. Now, I keep looking out my window. My wife's probably going to be here sometime. Anyhow, let's see, what other good disaster-related topics are there? Since all kinds of government outfits always say the same long line when it comes to back to the individual preparedness part. Have a kit, basically really quick to pack, food, water, medical supplies, etc., etc. Make a plan, stay informed, keep local on the news. Let's go a little bit more. Let's go a little more in depth with that. What all should be in a good bug out, get the fuck out of Dodge kit? Well, Me being me, I love beef jerky and I love roasted nuts like peanuts and cashews. I know a peanut isn't technically a nut, it's a goddamn blah 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 blah. Okay, anyways, pecans are some of my favorite as well. There's some, actually good multivitamins are really good to have for, especially if everything really goes to shit and good nutrition isn't going to be available for a while. Yes, multivitamins will be very helpful in maintaining a good nutrition standard, at least from the vitamins perspective. And they're also not going to go bad unless they get all wet and stuff, and they won't be very good for long. But anyways, yes, keep all your goodies in good watertight bags, just to make sure you're get the fuck out of Dodge kit don't get ruined. That just really suck. So we kind of covered food and water, and let's get into any other important items, such as the way shit is going down now with a whole lot of human-caused violence type of issues on the area of firearms. As someone who supports every part of the Constitution, including the right to own and carry firearms. Yes, I'm a very big fan of it. I like to shoot all kinds of them, from anything muzzleloader to any of the modern day stuff. So yes, firearms are a very valuable thing of kit to keep bad people from doing very bad shit to us and our family and our friends. And I have absolutely no sleep over people that are doing or trying to do really bad shit to other people if they get put down and no longer get to do that. So a lot of ammunition is also essential if somebody has firearms, because a firearm without any ammunition is basically a poorly designed hammer. In addition to firearms, and yes, I also have, see my bow over in the corner. One of my bows anyways. I do like archery for one. It's good exercise. And two, in some situations, yes, a quiet hunting method is preferred over a loud gunshot. And also there's a challenge of it, because it's really easy to hit an animal with a firearm, especially when you live in a heavy forested area and your shot is probably going to be less than 50 yards. In that case, I'd rather use a muzzleloader anyways, because those heavy 50 caliber balls will pass through a bunch of brush a whole lot easier and lose a lot less accuracy than a smaller modern rifle. So that's one thing I favor about muzzleloaders, especially in thick brushy areas. And bows, because they're quiet. And I can also shoot them a lot, unless I break my arrows again. Okay, so with that, there's my wife's crossbow. But yes, they definitely provide a lot of utility use, and this is some of them. Yeah, so in a way, I kind of show and tell. Yes, I have 2 bows in my house. I actually have 3. I have a compound bow. Whether I use a compound bow or recurve, a lot of it depends on if I'm walking a lot. I'll use my recurve because it's a lot lighter than my compound bow. When I'm in a more stationary thing like a stand, yes, I'll use my compound bow. If I have to get an awkward shot, especially in a climbing tree stand, all I really got to do is get that compound bow past the breaking point, line everything up right, and I'm going to hit my target right. On a recurve, well, a lot of the power is really dependent on how far back I can pull it. If I can get a regular full draw, I know it's going to hit. But if I'm in an awkward situation where I'm really not going to get a full draw, where I'm going to hit is probably going to be lower than where I normally hit with a full draw. So that's really the difference in whether I prefer a compound or a recurve bow. Basically what I'm going to be doing. And that weight factor does come into play with a lot of other things too. It's kind of why I like the block pistols, because they're very light, especially the 20 with that 10 millimeter round. Walk around the woods, walk around anywhere all day with it, and really not notice it because it is light and it has a whole lot of firepower behind it. However, there is one drawback to that particular one. It is very bulky. I mean, if it's in a hip holster, that's fine, but if it's like in a waistband type of one, or a concealed environment, where a concealed thing is preferable, yeah, it is a bit bulky and it's a bit uncomfortable. So, little smaller ones like a Springfield XDM 9mm, a little bit thinner, still really lightweight. Yeah, and it can tuck into an inside pants holster quite well, and really not cause much of a bulging issue. Let me put it that way. Type of ammunition, one of the most important parts of the whole setup. So, good hollow points. You cannot beat a good hollow point like Winchester PDXs. The civil defense load. Uh, let's see. For reloaders, they have even more option of types of bullets they can load. Um, Really, my favorite are those Winchester PDXs because they can really deliver fantastic results. And even the civil defense ones are great because they're really lightweight. They don't fragment too easily or too quickly. Hell, I've tested them really well, even through double layers into milk jugs, and they just punch right clean through those pieces of about 8 inch, 1/8 of an inch leather, and blew the shit out of that jug. So those civil defense bullets work very, very well. Solid people prefer solid core. Those PDXs are perfect, for lack of a better word. Let's see. Those are for handgun. Really want a handgun round to perform very well. You want the full expansion of it. You want to make it as large of a wound cavity as possible, and really minimize the chance of any energy loss by the bullet going all the way through the target. If you're dealing with rifles or shotguns, that's a whole other story because there's a whole lot of energy contained within those rounds, and it's going to just cause a whole lot of internal damage just as it is. And ammunition really comes into play in rifles and stuff once you get into really big game and distance, and then the bullet performance is going to matter a whole lot more. We're not going to really get into that now either. Okay, we're really talking about having firearms for personal protection against people that want to do really bad shit to us and our family and friends. So in that case, most rifle rounds are just good the way. I mean, whatever you can get for a reasonable price, you can have sitting around. And it is a good idea to keep your, I guess, in the lack of better term, shit hitting the fan ammo from your high premium ammo. Well, so basically, you really want to shoot your high. Well, you don't accidentally take your shit hitting the fan ammo and take a very big game on them. I guess that's most of them. I mean, you can swap back and forth anyways for regular use, but okay, it's another part of ammo. It's always a good idea to test to see how well it functions in a particular firearm. Some ammo sometimes in some firearms they don't always function very well, especially when you're dealing with semi-automatics. Most of them function flawlessly with different types of ammo. However, every now and then one type of firearm, one type of ammo will get a little finicky. So if it gets a little finicky, okay, that's not the ammo I want in my hitting the fan ammo box. I really wanted to avoid using that term too, because that term does get, I guess, in a way misconstrued by certain extreme elements. I guess best way of putting it. All right, so now I got into a good long firearms babble. So might as well just get in talking about prepping too. Am I a prepper? Not for your normal understanding of the words. Do I know how to use firearms and everything very well? Yes. Was I in the military? Yes. Yes, I am now in public safety, but I'm not here representing any agency or jurisdiction level. I'm here talking as a person who, well, is a disaster doctor and want to take preventative measures in some ways to reduce loss of life and property and stuff at the individual level. And that's kind of what goes into a lot of prepping. There's a lot of things people can do around their own house to eliminate their chances of getting hurt by anything, including hurricanes, which include like shutters and flooding for you can put flood type of call it dry flood proofing around the building or elevating it. Yeah, I've been a lot of talk about the human caused issues because that's a very big issue now, right? Like right as I'm speaking here. And that is definitely something that can be really avoided is keeping someone and their family and their property from getting damaged by all those assholes that are going around looting and vandalizing other people's shit. That is where people can really protect themselves by being adequately prepared, remaining vigilant, which basically just means keeping awareness at all times, awareness of your surroundings. If people see crazy shit starting to brew, they can get the fuck out of Dodge and be able to go home and take some measures to protect the person's home. And that's where the firearms come in. I know someone's going to say, oh, we used to see all this cool shit I could do with my sword. However, if there's someone throwing rocks, bricks, burning bottles of gasoline, or they have firearms, yeah, no matter how good somebody is with a sword, if somebody's especially throwing shit like rocks, bricks, yeah, the sword isn't going to help them very much. They're not going to be able to get close enough. And if the other person has a firearm, well, yeah, the person with a sword is pretty much fucked. So, as much as I love swords, I love using swords and playing with them and seeing what they can cut and stuff. And it's definitely not going to be my go-to weapon when bad people are trying to do bad shit. Mostly, yeah, because of all the reasons I just said. And it's one of the reasons it sort of got out of favor for warfare anyways. That was because of the invention of firearms, and firearms were able to do damage at longer distance, so the people on the sword weren't able to get to the musketeers to, deliver much damage. Because they all got shot at the longer range. However, now back to overall prepping. Preppers do get some kind of a bad rap at times. Some of it's justified, a lot of it not so much. They're looked at as cuckoos who are just waiting for the world to end, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And they all live in their little bunkers and they have their little cults and, do all kinds of loony shit, right? There probably are some of them like that, but a whole lot of them, majority of them are really, they're prepping because they basically don't want to get caught with their pants down when if something really goes to shit. At least they do have a plan. They have resources to at least sustain themselves and their families, or maybe even a small collective of people for resource sharing purposes. And they have at least have a plan to kind of hold out for a while. Okay, some of them take they take a not very practical approach to it. I'll just put it that way, because there are some that are very isolationist, and when it comes to being able to recover from any type of major disaster, especially like the really life on Earth altering one that a lot of preppers are preparing for. Well, basically, an isolationist strategy is the worst fucking strategy ever for something like that. Because the only way groups or people are going to really survive is by resource sharing and, basically rebuilding society and coming together as small communities, right? I mean, hell, that's how the human race was able to survive the beginning and the ice ages and volcanoes and all kinds of other shit. One little person sitting in their cave with all kinds of arrows that he stockpiled and is sitting there by himself playing with his wiener or whatever the fuck he was doing. Okay, that person probably just, died with all his own, even with the stockpile arrows and everything. That was a whole fictional example. I just made that shit up right now. Well, all those people that were basically resource sharing and coming up with a plan to kind of build their communities, they prospered pretty well because they had people with different skill sets that can do certain things. Some people might have been really great at being able to put up shelters. Some may have been great hunters. Some may have been great at catching fish. Some have been very good at being able to tell what kind of plants were edible and not. So with all those different skill sets and different people, they're able to really rebuild the community and continue on from there. I mean, it's the same thing at a very life-altering event like the Yellowstone caldera or Long Valley caldera near Bishop, California ever blows and almost causes a nuclear winter. It's really there that the resource sharing is going to be very important. Hey, some of us may be good hunters and a lot of people may have good gardening skills. So can we do all of them by ourselves? Well, to a certain extent. However, I mean, there's a lot of different food things. There's a hell of a lot of people that are a hell of a lot better at growing stuff than I am. Okay, my half chili plants are doing well, but a lot of them died because when the tropical storm Cristobal went over and rained for a few days straight, a lot of them drowned. Okay, our corn didn't do very well because they were planted in a box that didn't have enough thing for their roots to expand and for it to grow very well. A couple other things that we tried also died. The cucumbers grew really well. Tomato plants grew well, but they haven't produced any fruit yet. So yes, I'm not the best grower of stuff, but yeah, I am a good hunter. And I'm a pretty good negotiator and planner, so hey, you got those skills. You can help delineate tasks and see what people are good at and really go from there to rebuild the end of the world in case that happens. And I know, yes, indeed, being able to utilize people's skills, especially agriculture-wise. I mean, a lot of those things are taught generation to generation, or even people just figuring it out as they go. But hey, it takes time for them to figure it out. If they haven't figured it out, like, all right, yes, come join our team. We need somebody that's really good at growing stuff. Hey, I'm good at hunting, but somebody else might be a whole lot better at it than I am, which is, well, there is a hell of a lot of people. I'm really sure that's a hell of a lot better at it than I am. So now we're getting a collective of good skills, and yes, I know how things are built overall. There are actually a lot of people that are a whole lot better than I am about actually building things, building shelters, building houses, fixing things, and even being able to install like a small localized small community power grid that's going to be able to provide for 50 people that are all in one community. It's like in a Walking Dead where they had all solar panels and Eugene hooked everything up in a similar situation than that. It's about really, yes, it's about getting into a non-isolationist strategy and preparing, really having your full preparation plan built around rebuilding your community, right? That's the whole aspect that I'm going for here versus the isolationist strategy. Basically, the isolationist strategy is, okay, we're going to take care of our own and blah, 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 blah. We're going to build a big perimeter and we're going to keep everybody out. No one's gonna take our shit, etc., etc. But hey, you got somebody has a big old giant fence, and things really go to hell, and innocent remaining people know, hey, they're the ones who are stockpiling all that shit, right? You find out, and you go see their big perimeter fence, and you're like, okay, and they're like, yeah, now I know who has all the good stuff. So all those people are rather just take other people's stuff rather than work productively together. Well, guess who their main targets are going to be. And also guess who probably nobody is going to come help out once they're under attack. Yeah, so if somebody asks me, I'm a prepper, I often say not in a lot of the senses that you have of them. However, yes, I'm all about being prepared for the worst case scenario. And really, even multiple scenarios, really. I guess that's the short of it. I am a prepper in a way, but not in a way that is often viewed, and a lot of times it's viewed negatively, which is really not fair to a lot of those people that really claim to be preppers. Most of them are actually just your regular decent people that are doing a job. They're just putting shit away in case there's a whole life altering event that happens, and that's actually a pretty damn good practice. And again, it beats the hell out of somebody just standing around getting caught with their pants down. Now, what kind of life-altering situations can there realistically be? Well, I already mentioned those big caldera volcanoes blowing up. That happens every 800,000 years, right? And the last time they both happened was, right around over 700,000 years ago. So, really something to be mindful that can happen. Now, those are just two of the calderas that's within the U.S. that are really well known. Not taking into account others around the world that, hey, they might have a shorter fuse. So major volcanic activity, major realistic one. Number two, spaceborne objects, big comets, asteroids, meteorites, those type of things. They've hit the Earth a whole lot of times, and they will do so again. Hold on a minute. Okay, we'll continue this discussion later on. No, just kidding. Okay, asteroids. Life-changing events happened over and over throughout history. Now, let's get into big tornado outbreaks. They really are regionalized, but do cause a whole lot of havoc when they do happen. Hurricanes, they generally are regionalized where they make landfall, but overall, once they get compounded and happen year after year after year, yes, it just really tears shit apart. And it really makes it almost unfeasible or really troublesome in recovering from it. I mean, there always is a chance where major hurricanes can just blast one area year after year after year and completely overwhelms any local resources, and they're almost not able to completely recover. Okay, let's talk about one of the big ones that have been responsible for extinction level events, and that's biologicals. Yes, during now COVID, everybody almost in the line of work really thought it was going to be a lot deadlier than it was. Fortunately, it wasn't. However, that's not to say the next thing that pops up isn't going to be as deadly as it could be as it's initially forecasted. Again, plan for the worst case scenario. If it's better, awesome. If not, well, shit. At least we planned for it, and we're not getting caught with our pants down. So biologicals, they always have a potential for wiping out the majority of the human or any other animal population. And those biologicals also can wipe out major parts of food, agriculture, animals, and all those populations. So without the food, we're pretty much fucked, right? So those are the big life-changing potential disasters that preppers are really prepping for. Yes, it's realistic; they can actually happen. Likelihood maybe a little lower, but hey, it's better to be prepared than it is getting caught with your pants down. So that's all I have. Till next time.